Alrighty, we're going to do a part 2 MA verse what turns out to be basically all of the state controlling bodies breakdown. But first, a quick shameless plug. I am giving away $100,000 this Christmas for anybody that makes a purchase on the MWMX website or signs up to our motocross coaching app. You can either win 100K or a 2024 Mercedes Moto van. More details down in the description. Check that out. Now, into the Goss that has basically taken the sport by storm, and what I believe is probably the biggest change in power within the sport in recent memory, definitely in my memory anyway. Now, what is going on? I mentioned in the last video that it's all about the Constitution. And I released that video about 30 minutes before MV put out their response to Roy Chamberlain's MA's letter. Now, Roy's letter made it look like it's basically all about the Constitution, and the states need to agree to this because the ASC, the Australian Sports Commission, has funded it, and we're going to lose our insurance if it doesn't go through. Now, the MV board responded basically saying, look, we've had a few issues with the Constitution, and yes, we've had lawyers look over it, and there are other states involved, and there are a few things we want to change, but the bigger point and the bigger issue here is actually the delegation of authority. Now, I'll get into the delegation of authority in a second. We're going to start off with the Constitution. To MB's credit, because I did say, look, they really need to give us a look at this Constitution so we can see what it actually is that they're disagreeing with. It was attached, including the amendments that were recommended by Motorcycle New South Wales, Motorcycling Western Australia, Motorcycling Victoria, and I think Tasmania has also now jumped on, which, if you look at the member base, that is about 80% of licensing, is those 3 or 4 states, right? There's not a whole heap in Northern Territory, South Australia, so on and so forth. Queensland are the outlier, and I haven't heard or seen too much from them on this at this point. But after reading the Constitution and its amendments, it is in my opinion that it's not that big of a deal. There's a few things in there that you could argue about and to push this way and push that way, but it's basically just a typical power play between the states and the national body. I don't think it's anything unusual. There's nothing in there that's too important or cause for concern. Certainly not for the riders or for the members or for the clubs. There's basically nothing in there that relates to them. It's more just things about the power play between MA and the state controlling bodies. For example, the time limit to serve at MA has always been 10 years. The states recommended bringing that down to 9 because that is in alignment with 3-year term limits. Not a big deal, but something to talk about. There was the issue of who can offer a discount on a MA license. Should it be the state controlling bodies or should it be MA? Things like this, right? Nothing that really concerns, and if it was passed or wasn't passed, the riders and clubs probably would have no idea that anything has even changed, right? Which is important because MV have made it pretty clear now, including some other states that have come out and said that it's more about the delegation of authority. Look, we can work with the Constitution, and I believe Motorcycle New South Wales did approach lawyers. That is costly, not ideal, but hey, look, I understand it, and they've gotten this advice, and that's what's had the back and forth between them and MA. But it's the delegation of authority that is seeming to now be the big sticking point here. Now, the delegation of authority, and excuse me if I get anything this wrong, I'm literally just spitballing off the top of my head just to give you guys a little bit of something unbiased, unopinionated. The delegation of authority is in relation to the insurance, and it relates to the insurance in the way of a gross negligence cause. Now, in the past, there has been some incidents, or when there is an incident, you're covered no matter what. If the event is covered, everybody there is covered, it's all good. What MA are trying to implement now is a gross negligence cause, which basically means, look, you're covered, the event's covered, but if you do something that's really dumb, really egregious, we can remove that cover after the fact, right? So let's say a volunteer or a club member or a rider or whoever does something that is just absolutely done without due care and is almost like intentionally going to cause harm, then you won't be insured and you're on your own then. You are liable yourself. That is a gross negligence cause. And this is where the issue has come in with the state controlling bodies in MA, because I believe the state controlling bodies want real clarification on what is the gross negligence cause, who is covered, and what isn't covered, more importantly. And to give an example, like a real world example of this, there was a incident at Hatta once where there were spectators lined up on the outside of the track. One of them got hit by a bike. He broke his legs, or leg, something like this. I might not get this exactly right. And basically, like, it was a very, very serious injury. Now, who is liable there? Should the track have been pushed back? Is the spectator in the wrong spot? Did the rider do something wrong? It's a grey area. And that area is where the gross negligence would have to be discussed. Did the club do something that was considered negligent, or did they act with due care and the spectator was in the wrong place and it's their fault? This is where the grey area is. There was another example, I believe, at Blue Rock, where there was a spectator on the fence and he was sitting on the fence with his legs over the fence on the track side, and a bike exited the track, hit that spectator, broke his legs, very serious injury, resulted in a claim. Who was responsible there? Rider? Is it the club because the spectator wasn't behind the fence? Is it the spectator for breaking the rules and being over the fence? Was there due diligence? Was there gross negligence? This is the sticking issue. And what will basically happen is that if MA or Mail or whoever it is can deem that the club or the volunteer or whoever has done harm here did act with gross negligence, they would be 100% liable for the incident, right? And that can mean the sum of millions. But you could also say, look, to act with gross negligence, when you search the broader term, like, you've got to do something pretty bad, right? Like, you've got to really have stuffed up almost to the point where it was intentional and you knew something bad was happening, but you just didn't care. Somebody got hurt and it's your fault. Now, come to whatever conclusion you wish on that. This is the sticking point in insurance. It's not overly uncommon to have this, but it is something that the state controlling bodies want clarification on. Now, I have heard a lot of rumblings and a lot of rumors that they've approached MA to get clarification. MA haven't shown up. There's been mediators involved. The ASC has been involved. It's gotten messy and it's gotten sticky. But I'm just going to speculate here that the Constitution is one problem, the gross negligence is another. And from what I understand, the SCBs are basically saying, if this gross negligence clause gets put in place and we don't know exactly what it defines, we're going to lose so many volunteers that aren't going to want to be seen as liable for any incident that ever happens, that we aren't going to be able to run our state. It's going to be so difficult to put on events. Now, a counter to that is that, well, if that does happen, MA also ceases to exist. So I have more faith in MA that they're not going to sign their own suicide note by saying, look, nobody's covered anymore and everybody's just going to run for the hills and not participate in the sport, so now we're not going to have a sport. But I understand why state controlling bodies do want clarification, but this is basically where we're at. So there's a lot of rumblings going around, and I'm trying not to get too specific on the points, and of course I'm going to get some things wrong here, guys, absolutely and utterly. As I said, I'm just going on the fly, doing the best of what I've got, which is basically not much, because the media companies have done an absolute runner on this one in the sport. Apart from, I believe it's Trevor Hedge at MC News. He's been keeping everybody updated with the press releases, but this is sort of like the inner goss behind the scenes. So on Thursday, I think that's the 19th of December, the state controlling bodies will meet and they will have a vote. Now, I believe they've all unanimously got a vote on this constitution to get it passed. And this delegation of authority is rolled into this constitution somehow, some way. I'm not exactly sure, but it would seem they're both lumped in and this is what's being voted on. Now, MA has made it very, very, very clear, if the states don't vote unanimously, we are going to lose cover for the sport. Now, there is again a lot of rumour mill here because MA own Mail, Motorcycling Australia Insurance Limited. That's what covers the sport. The state controlling bodies somewhat fund that, so they somewhat own it. Could it really be taken away? Could it not? I'm not exactly sure. This is very complicated stuff. I have faith in MA that they're not, like, they're definitely doing some strong arming. There's no doubt about that. They're very direct in their points, but I just seem to have more faith in them that they wouldn't do this if there wasn't a reason, right? Like, I know it's very hard to get insurance. The climate right now is very, very difficult on that side of things. They are working hand in hand with the Australian Sports Commission. That is who has funded this. That is like their top dog when it comes to sports and constitutions and insurance. Like, the ASC is as high up as it gets. MA work directly with that and they forward everything onto the states. It's hard for me to imagine like malevolent acting considering all of that, but I also understand why the states are doing what they are doing. So we're going to have to sit tight until Thursday, 19th of December to see what happens. I mean, if you take everything at face value, if the states don't vote unanimously, we will not have insurance and permits after that. But if you believe what the states are saying, MA are just trying to strong arm them and the sport will go on after that. We need more time to work it out and agree to what exactly what we're running under. Now, there's so many ways you can take this. I know for me personally, like I've read through all the annual reports of the states and through MA and this, that, and the other, and I do have to say, if this sport was run as a private entity or just as a for-profit organisation, you wouldn't have the state controlling bodies in their current form. The sport isn't that big. It has 30,000 annual licensed members and around 100,000 individual day licenses, right? And then they're all broken up between the states. Each state has a board of 6 or 7 people and then has around 5 to 10 employees for each one. And then they're all broken into committees for dirt track and speedway and motocross and supercross. It's a very big structure for not that big of a sport, right? If you look at the gross turnover of each state, it's in the vicinity of like $2 to $4 million, and around 80%, 70% of that is chewed up in employee costs to keep that running. It wouldn't be hard if someone was to come in as a private entity to say, look, we need to align and automate a lot of these state processes and just run everything in-house at MA, right? That is entirely possible. And I believe when the structure of motorcycling was set up in this country, that wasn't possible, right? That was in a pre-digital age. Everything was done by paperwork, very slow, very clunky. You had to have it delegated out so it could run, right? Whereas we're now in the modern age, you could almost automate and align a lot of things: scrutineering, sign-on, medical clearances, permitting, coaching line, all of it could basically be automated to a large degree, where you'd have 1 or 2 employees working directly with MA, get rid of all the boards, all the committees, and just have it all run as one branch under Motorcycling Australia. Now, for this to happen, wow, there would be some power struggles between MV, the state, rest of the, not just MV, sorry, all of the states and MA. And it almost does sort of seem like that is a little bit of a play here by MA, potentially. I'm purely speculating here, but they are certainly trying to grab and get a little more power and assert their dominance to say, this is the direction we're going, get on board or get out. They removed MV's ability to issue permits, basically another step towards running everything in-house at MA. If you read MA's annual reporting, they do mention how they want to use their RiderNet 2.0 app as a way to align and automate a lot of processes. They're going to start with the officials and coaching processes. They're going to make it all the same around the entire country. And, you know, there is speculation of this as well with the assets of running them in-house, all under MA's control. And look, after looking over all the numbers, all the assets, all the ins and outs and the daily duties and responsibilities, it could certainly happen. And if that did happen, I mean, you would probably reduce the operating cost of the sport in its entirety by 40%, yet you wouldn't lose any revenue coming in the door, right? So where would that 40% go? Who knows? Back to clubs, back to riders, back to events, back to assets. I don't know, but that is certainly possible, and it is kind of insane when you look at it from like a private business perspective, the way the sport is run. And it does lead to what we've got here right now. We've got so many heads, literally. What is 7 times 7? Is that 42 or 49? Something like that. 7 sevens, I think it's 49. Anyway, now I want to know the answer to that. 7 times 7 is 42 or 49. That is how many board members have to come together to vote on this one issue of the Constitution. It's a lot, plus the committees, plus all the clubs. So that's where we're at, guys. That last bit there was just me purely speculating with my business cap on. It's very interesting, this stuff. I do take a lot of enjoyment out of learning it. I absolutely have no dog in the race. I'm going to submit some permits very, very soon for coaching schools next year to different state controlling bodies, to MA. I hope they all get approved. Again, I have no dog in the fight here. I'm literally just trying to speculate on what can happen. I totally understand the states want and need for clarification on what they're actually going to sign up to this Thursday. And then I also understand how MA are trying to push the sport in a certain direction for the greater good that is maybe a little bit misunderstood because the transparency and communication isn't quite there. But again, if there are things in this I've said that are wrong, I fully expect that. It's a very quickly evolving situation, but you guys seem to take a lot of interest in it. And at the end of the day, us riders and club members right now, we don't, all the clubs do, but the riders, the licensees, we don't really have a duty to know what's going on. The club delegates and life members vote in the board and they vote on the issues with MA. So it's not about us riders. Us riders are members of clubs, but that's about it here. So just a bit of speculation on my behalf, and that'll wrap us up, guys. I will give maybe another update on Friday after we see what the vote is and see what happens, but it's certainly evolving. Don't forget, $100,000 will be going to someone this Christmas Day. We'll do the draw at 9 p.m. on the 24th of December. And if you choose the cash, I'll transfer it at 8 a.m. Christmas morning. If you choose the van and you're a member with us living on the East Coast, I'll drive it to your house Christmas goddamn day. If you live anywhere else and you're not a member, you'll get it in the week, 2 weeks, something like that. So that's that, guys. That'll wrap us up. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Have a great day. Goodbye. Konnichiwa.